have the pleasure now of speaking with one of the members of the Catholic Writers Guild, the Vice President, Carolyn Astfalk, about her book, Rightfully Ours. And welcome, Carolyn, to EWTN's Bookmark Show.
Thank you very much, Doug.
So it sounds like we've got quite a crowd there. And the Writers Guild actually has other events that happen besides the CMN. What else is going on for you as the Vice President?
Well, we have a conference going on simultaneously that's geared for writers, published writers, and for those interested in becoming writers. And we have workshops going on every day with educational opportunities for writers and for networking, for pitch sessions to publishers, and just for getting together, networking, and camaraderie.
Okay. So this is what? Is this your fourth book? Is that my understanding?
It was the third published book.
Okay, very good. So let me ask you, the style and the format, Rightfully Ours, give us an overview what this book is about, who's it targeted at?
It's a coming-of-age story for young adults and adults, and it's based on a nugget of a story about a lost treasure that I had come across and used that as a springboard back in 2010 when I first wrote a first draft of it about missing gold that actually was traveling to the Philadelphia Mint, was rerouted because of the Battle of Gettysburg, and then was lost somewhere people suspect in western or northern Pennsylvania. So this book is set in Williamsport area, which is north central Pennsylvania, and that's the background for a story of two teens who develop a friendship and then fall in love, and it really becomes an exploration of their decision about what love really means, what is theirs for their relationship, and it's a chastity-themed book as well.
Well, also, since you're part of the Catholic Writers Guild, I'm sure there's an overt or some aspect of the Catholic faith that you're reflecting in this story, right? Right,
and sometimes we call this theology of the body fiction because this does touch on the young adult aspect of trying to take ideas that you've been taught, that your church has taught you, that your family's taught you, or your school, and then internalizing them. And what do I believe about what my faith says about this? And in this case, it's about sexuality and the place for sexuality within Christian marriage.
Now, is this a popular genre then for young people to read?
Their young adult genre is very popular. What I see a lot of when I just look at the secular market is a lot of dark novels, and increasingly a large number of LGBTQ type lifestyle novels. And so some other authors and I with Catholic Teen Books are trying to bring some more edifying books for Catholic teens that reflect their values and the faith, so that they can have entertainment that is for fun, but it also doesn't contradict what they might believe and what they've been taught.
Now, were you always into writing, or is this something you came late to?
I started writing when I was very young with just simple stories and journaling, but most of my writing until, say, 10 years ago was nonfiction writing. I used to work for the Pennsylvania Catholic Conference, and I did a lot of communications work. So I did, research papers and newsletters and things like that, but it wasn't until about 10 years ago I just decided I would try my hand at writing fiction. So it's kind of a different animal, but it's been a lot of fun.
So is that the reason you set your story in Pennsylvania? Because you're from Pennsylvania?
Yeah, they say write what you know, I guess. And I've lived in Pittsburgh and in the Hershey area my whole life. So my husband would travel to Williamsport, and I would spend some time there each summer. So most of my novels are set in and around that area.
So you're going to have a Little League Baseball World Series be part of one of your stories coming up then?
That is in Rightfully Ours. They actually go to the Little League Museum. That's there. Well, that's the biggest thing in Williamsport, right? I guess. So there is a scene that takes place there at that. Yeah.
So when you sit down to write a story like this, do you have it all laid out in your mind how it's going to play, or do you allow the characters to lead you where you need to go?
Definitely more character-led. I usually have a couple scenes in mind, I have characters in mind, but I don't fully know where the story's going until I start writing, and then I sort of go the direction, the story feels like it's going, and go from there, and then revise and revisit until it's something that seems readable.
So how do you like to write, and where do you like to write?
Well, I have 4 young children at home, so I write when I can and where I can, and most often that's a laptop at the dining room table and with a lot of interruption. So when the babies were little, it was a lot of time during naps, and now it's just around the edges or when kids are in school. So when I can.
So what does it take, like if somebody was watching this thinking, gee, I'd like to write a book like this, what did it take you to put this book together?
Well, at first it takes starting, and I think that's the biggest hurdle, just starting and doing it and coming up with a draft, because you can't edit words you haven't written. So starting, and then once you have something, taking the time to learn more about the craft and what it takes to get it edited and to clean it up and make it something that's enjoyable for others to read and that's professionally done.
Well, thank you so much for spending a few minutes with us from the Catholic Marketing Network. Carolyn Astfalk, who's also the VP of the Catholic Writers Guild. We've always been very supportive of their fine work, and people should check out their website, find out more about your organization. Thank you, Carolyn.
Thank you very much, Doug.
Now we have the pleasure of speaking with Leslie Wahl, author of The Perfect Blind Side, available through Pauline Books and Media. Welcome, Leslie, to EWTN's Bookmark.
Thanks for having me, Doug. It's great to be here.
So you're part of the Catholic Writers Guild, and this book of yours came out a couple of years ago, but it's actually award-winning, right?
Yeah, it came out in 2015, and it's by Pauline, like you said, and it has won a few awards, Catholic Writers Guild Award and Catholic Press Association. So it's done pretty well, and I'm very excited because the new one will be coming out in December for it, so the sequel to it. So the story continues, which was fun to get back to these characters.
Very good. Now the story itself is it's a book about Jake, a silver medal winning snowboarder, ends up going to Colorado. Who is this targeted at? What's the age group that you're writing for here?
Yeah, it's a YA, so young adult, but they're clean, so anywhere from 5th grade and up have enjoyed it. In fact, I've had some senior citizens who have really enjoyed it, so I guess it's a wide range of readers. Yes, so it's about an Olympic snowboarder who wins a silver medal, but the instant fame kind of goes to his head. So his family moves him to a small Colorado mountain town, and he meets a girl there, and they become embroiled in a mystery in the town's abandoned gold mine.
Now let me ask you, are there certain components when one writes a book like this for the young adult audience, especially obviously assuming a Catholic book as well? You know, is it usually a girl and a guy, or a guy and a girl? And then I noticed that there's usually some sort of mystery or underlying thing as part of it. Is that kind of a standard approach, or the kind of things that young people like to read about?
Yeah, I think so. I just really have always enjoyed mysteries, even as a young reader myself. So I tend to write books that have mysteries, adventure. I like to throw in some humor, a little light romance, and then the faith aspect. But I'm also part of a group of authors that all write for teens, and there's some that do historic fiction, some about saints, some dystopian. I just happen to do the mystery, which the teens seem to really enjoy.
Right. Now let me ask you that you're the co-founder of CatholicTeenBooks.com, and when you write, how do you go about writing? When do you find the time? Is there a particular time of the day that you like to write?
Yeah, I like to, at the moment, I really like to write in the morning. My kids are older now, so I have a lot more time. But when they were younger, it was kind of a hit or miss. I'd bring my notebook along and write while, I was waiting at soccer practice or sitting in car line waiting for them to get done. You just had those moments that you would have to grab to write. But now I'm a little more structured now that my children are older, which is really a luxury.
Now, were you a person who always enjoyed writing when you were growing up? How did you come back to do this?
Yeah, I was always really creative as a kid and enjoyed writing. In fact, I won a tiny little medal in 3rd grade for some little story I wrote. But I kind of got away from it, and I didn't pursue it at all through college or even when I was out of college. It wasn't until my own children were looking for YA books. So my son was in 5th grade, and he was a great reader, so he was looking for teen books to read, but I was having a really hard time finding books that were appropriate. the issues that were being in these books didn't reflect the values I was trying to instill. And so I kept thinking, why doesn't anybody write the kind of books I'm looking for? And soon after that, the idea for The Perfect Blind Side just kind of popped into my head, and I felt the need to write it down, and worked on it a few years, and then was lucky enough to find Pauline, and they agreed to publish it.
Right, so that's Leslie Wahl. The book is The Perfect Blind Side, and then the new book coming out, Extreme Blind Side. Everybody can look for that as well. Thank you so much, Leslie Wahl, for joining us here from the Catholic Marketing Network.
Thank you so much. Bye.
And now we're joined by Teresa Linden, author of A Tortured Soul, Silver Fire Publishing, a member of the Catholic Writers Guild, from the floor of the Catholic Marketing Network in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. It's great for you to spend a few minutes with us. Welcome, Teresa.
Thank you. I'm really happy to be here.
Now, you've written quite a few books. This, I believe, is number 11. Now, this particular novel's unusual in some ways because it's focused on purgatory. How'd you get interested in that?
Oh, I started being interested in purgatory as a young adult. I was really fascinated with the four last things: death, judgment, heaven, and hell. And I just started reading everything I could about purgatory. Then I just started feeling compassion for the souls in purgatory and started praying for them. It wasn't until just a few years ago that I felt inspired to write a book that will draw attention to these souls so that maybe more people will pray for them.
When you decided to write something like that, did you think that by doing that you might have been limiting your audience to a specifically Catholic audience because of other people's belief systems in the Protestant world or Christian book, where they might pick that up but see purgatory and think that's not where they're at?
Possibly, but this is a supernatural thriller, so that those supernatural thriller elements are throughout the entire story. And Protestants have read it, and they've enjoyed it as well,
Right.
because nobody really knows what happens after you die. So a lot of Christians are open to some form of purification. They just don't understand what it is. So I think that the book speaks to everybody.
When did you first get the idea of this? How long did it take you actually to write the book?
How long did it take to write the book? Actually, this one came together quite quickly. I had the idea and the inspiration a couple of years ago, but once I started reading about the apparitions that Eugenie von der Leyen received, the story I did just came together. I just thought it would be better to set my story in contemporary times instead of in the past. So I have it set in today's time in upstate New York.
Now, you say in here that the outline, as I understand it, is a single woman evicted from her family home, a terrifying specter that only she sees, a dark connection between his past and hers is how you said it. And do you think people in a lot of ways today are even more interested in these kinds of things because they are searching for what the future holds in eternity?
Right, what lies beyond, nobody really knows, so it's something that a lot of people are interested in. And that dark connection that this soul has with my protagonist is an actual connection that the mystic had with one of the souls. There are two of the souls that I took from this mystic's diary, and I combined them into one for the sake of the plot. But there really was this dark connection, which I can't really explain without spoiling the story, but it's very much a story of mercy. It's mercy for what the visionary shows to this soul. It's also mercy because God has shown such great mercy towards this soul, which really comes out in the story. But also purgatory itself is the mercy of God.
Right, effectively.
And that teaching, I hope, comes through this story.
Right. Now, you have an endorsement here by our good friend, the Purgatory lady, Susan Tassoni. It's been on this show many, many times, on the network many times. Now, one of the things she's always promoting, and I get a sense of this as well, is to remind people to pray for those holy souls, right?
Yes, and that's the whole point that I wrote this story, is because I would like to do something to remind people. It seems like few in our world even think about, the souls in purgatory. So I was really honored that Susan Tassoni agreed to read the book. I mean, she's known to many as the Purgatory lady, so to have her endorsement, she called me up and told me that she loved the book. She said, I got it right. I got all of the teachings of purgatory right, and that she thought this fictional story could reach a whole new audience. You know, she has a lot of nonfiction out there, and there's a movie about purgatory too, but maybe with this book it'll reach more people who wouldn't otherwise think about the souls.
And just before we go, how is this book different than the other books you've written in the past?
Oh, most of my books are geared toward young adults. I have a Catholic teen fiction series, contemporary fiction, the West Brothers, and I have a dystopian trilogy, and I have a new adult Christian romance. So this is just one of a kind. It's unlike anything that I've written before.
Okay, well, thank you.
And it's also, this one is geared toward adults.
All right, well, thank you so much. People who have read you before, maybe find something new. People who haven't will discover you. Teresa Linden, author of Tortured Soul, Silver Fire Publishing, member of the Catholic Writers Guild, a group we always like to support here on the Bookmark Show. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much.
And now we're joined by Emily Jaminet, who along with Michelle Fanley has put together a couple of books. The first one we wanted to talk about was Our Friend Faustina, Life Lessons in Divine Mercy. And the two of you have edited this book. What was the genesis of putting this together, and where did you find the authors that are involved in this book?
Our friend Faustina is really a great reminder that we can seek these relationships, these friendships with the saints. And these women that have stepped up and contributed with their stories about their friendship with Saint Faustina and how they could be inspired to live out her spirituality in their very own life, were just friends of ours, very active across the country in ministry life. So Michelle and I, sent out the email and asked if they wanted to contribute, and they were more than pleased to share their story of how Saint Faustina has influenced them.
Right. Well, I certainly know that Susan Tassoni, who I know quite well, we call her usually the Purgatory Lady, is what, but she's gotten involved with Faustina and things like that. Elizabeth Ficocelli also has been on our show before, so I'm familiar with her. How do you get involved personally, or the two of you get involved with Faustina, and why do you think of her as your friend?
Well, we like to say that St. Faustina might have tapped us on the shoulder as busy moms. Michelle and I are heavily involved in just raising our families and being involved in ministry in our hometown and involved in conferences, and we felt like called to cultivate a relationship with the saints, especially Saint Faustina, to spread the message of mercy throughout the world. So our first book, Divine Mercy for Moms, was a book directed towards moms to help them to live out the message of divine mercy in their life, and Our Friend Faustina is really an extension of what it looks like in the lives of many different women and how we can all be inspired to grow in our faith.
And when did you first become aware of the Divine Mercy devotion? I personally became aware of it by watching EWTN. How did you become familiar with it?
Well, that's a great question. Michelle and I, when we first started writing books, we realized that we traveled to her convent in Krakow, Poland within 1 year of each other because of a study abroad program, and we both had a very special spiritual connection in that little chapel, and we both felt like that this was a spirituality that everyone needs to really embrace and come to know the love of God through his merciful Son.
You also write in the beginning, because chapter 2 you wrote Life Lessons Learned from Faustina, that your journey began with the devotion that was practiced in your own family 3 decades ago. I still remember holding the rosary beads in my hand to learn the Chaplet of Divine Mercy in high school. So where did your parents get into Divine Mercy? How did they get into it?
Well, Michelle and I, both of our parents, were not friends growing up, but they both turned to EWTN to learn much of the faith. So I still remember the big satellite dish in my own home and how I would receive EWTN in my television, and that was really the spark of learning the Divine Mercy Chaplet and being exposed to Saint Faustina.
Now, the topics each person wrote on, you talked about life lessons, and obviously Susan wrote the kind of the forward, and Michelle had chapter 1, Tapped on the Shoulder by St. Faustina. Now, did each of the individual authors you approached come up with their own topic based on their own experience?
They did. What we found is as we would travel and speak about Divine Mercy or friendship, everyone would like to tell us their stories about how they have come to know the Divine Mercy message. So what we did is we really reached up and asked them, what would you like to share? And each person took a different aspect of the important message shared with us in the Divine Mercy diary. So for myself, I talked a lot about the importance of praying with people, especially the sick and the dying, and not knowing maybe how things are going to turn out on this end, but placing that person in the entrustment of Jesus' Divine Mercy.
Right, now we were talking about our friend Faustina, Life Lessons in Divine Mercy. Prior to that, you had done that book, Divine Mercy for Moms, sharing the lessons of St. Faustina. Well, how did that one come about?
Well, that was really a fruit of Michelle and I seeing the importance of helping mothers connect with their vocation of motherhood and living out the works of mercy. So, for example, getting that child a glass of water, is very typical in a mother's cycle or a parent's cycle in their day. But there's spiritual fruit by, giving a drink of water, living out the works of mercy in your own very own home.
Mm-hmm. Now, some person might say, well, a mom is raising children. You have St. Faustina. She's basically like a cloistered nun. How do mothers relate to St. Faustina?
Well, St. Faustina was a very busy woman, as many might know. She actually cared for wayward girls, and she did many of the difficult tasks that mothers do. So it is very relatable because a lot of times we're doing a lot of the heavy lifting for families, and I think it's really encouraging to see that the Lord raised up such a tremendous saint for modern times to deliver the message to all of us about God's merciful love, but also the way that she went about her life, the joy she had, the service she had to the other sisters, and not only the girls that she cared for.
Right. In addition, you also, the two you worked on the Friendship Project, the Catholic Women's Guide to Making and Keeping Fabulous Faith-Filled Friends. So that's a bit of a, do you think that's difficult for women, especially today, let alone anybody?
I think it is difficult. I think faith-filled friendships is something that it needs to be deliberate and cultivated. And Michelle and I found that when we would go about speaking, that was something a lot of women were interested in knowing about our friendship and how can you write a book together, how can you speak together. And what we really said is that, we help hold each other up and we help support each other. And the book is focused on these wonderful virtues that help instill solid faith-filled friendships, along with some saint quotes and inspirations to get them to see the value of really investing in a faith-filled community.
Okay, very good. The Friendship Project, Divine Mercy for Moms. You guys are busy, and of course your latest one, our friend Faustina, Life Lessons in Divine Mercy. Michelle Fanley, along with you, Emily Jeanette, thank you so much for joining us here from the Catholic Marketing Network. Have a good show.
Thank you.